Hi, this is Sham Shankar from Ekascloud. In this video, I will explain about the placement groups in EC2. So, when we are launching instance, right, we are launching many servers like Windows Server or Linux servers, and it will be launched in a data center of the AWS. It can be in multiple region, it can be in multiple availability zone, right? So with the help of placement group and with the type of workload we have, we can decide how the instance that we are launching should be placed. For example, it can be cluster, it can be partition or spread. So, so there are three types. So if we go to our AWS console, when I try to launch instance, so I will go to launch an instance. So if we go to additional details, here you can see placement groups, right? So if I try to create one placement groups, so it will ask which type of placement group you want to create. So I will give create placement group, and here you can see placement strategy. So this is how we create placement group. It can be cluster, it can be partition, or it can be spread. So these are the three placement group which we are going to see now. So placement groups are nothing but how our EC2 instance should be placed in the physical data center of AWS according to our need. So each placement strategy has their own advantage and disadvantage, which we will see now. So, so as I said before, there are basically three types of placement groups. First one is cluster placement group, second one is partition, and third one is spread. So when we talk about cluster placement group, so if we launch our EC2 instances using cluster placement group, so we will see that it packs instance close to each other inside one availability zone. So the instance we are launching will get packed closer and it will be inside one availability zone. So advantage of this using this is it provides low latency network performance and it is used for tightly coupled applications. For example, if you are performing some high performance computing applications like machine learning, something like that, so the instances has to be placed together so that it can perform better on in total. So if you are launching 4 to 5 servers in cluster placement group, we can use that so that it can be a low latency network. The network traffic will be low, latency will be low, and it is mainly used for tightly coupled, as I said before, for machine learning and for high performing computing applications. So this is the use case for cluster placement groups, and I will show this in the architecture diagram. Here you can see this is the cluster placement group in one availability region zone. Here you can see the the EC2 instance are closely packed, so it will enhance network security, network, and it will provide high throughput, and it will also provide network low latency. So if you want to do some high performance computing, you can use cluster placement group. So the second one is partition placement group. So this partition placement group will spread your instance into logical partitions. So it do not share underlying hardware. The hardware will not be shared. It will be separate for different partition, and it is mainly used when we have something like large distributed or replicated workloads. The workloads which are repeatedly doing the workloads which are distributed. So for this type of thing, we can place our EC2 instances in a partition placement group. So if I show in diagram, it will be easy to understand. So as you can see, this is a partition placement group. So as you can see, each partition is located in separate AWS rack. As I said before, we are deciding how our EC2 instance should be placed in the AWS data center. Here you can see one availability zone, we have one partition which have a group of instance, and we have another partition which have a group of instance. So the the workload is distributed between these two so that it can perform better. So partition placement groups are better or best when we have something like distributed or uh, repeated uh, uh, repeated workloads. So here you can see a partition can have up to 7 availability zone. Okay, so this is about partition cluster group, partition placement group, sorry. So partition placement group, and third is called spread placement group. So as I said before, creating placement groups is not mandatory; it's optional. So as I said, It is optional to create placement group. Even if we don't select placement group, the instance will be launched. So by default, if you don't select any placement group, it will take spread placement group as the default thing, because one EC2 instance will not affect the another EC2 instance. So this is the main advantage of spread placement group. So strictly places a small group of instance across distinct underlying hardware. It will have different hardware to reduce correlated failure. So if one EC2 instance is getting failed, it will not get affected by another EC2 instance. So that is the main advantage when we use spread placement group. And if we see it is a diagrammatical way, here you can see each instance is located in a separate track. So it will be isolated, and it will this if this instance failure, it will not affect the another instance, as it is in the separate AWS rack in the AWS data center. So these are the three types of EC2. These are three types of placement groups in EC2, so that we can place the EC2 instance according to our requirement. So thank you.